Montana Territory, 1878. The wide expanse of Big Sky country stretched like a divine promise over the rolling hills of Paradise Valley. Winter came early that year, with October winds whipping across the plains and carrying whispers of the harshest season the territory had seen in decades. But for Andrew Nash, the cold was merely an afterthought. At 26, he had already amassed more wealth than most men twice his age, his cattle empire spreading across 5,000 acres of the richest grazing land in the territory. Andrew stood at the window of his two-story ranch house, watching snowflakes dance across his property. He had built this place from nothing after arriving from Boston with little more than determination and his inheritance. The Rocking Inn was now the most prosperous ranch in 3 counties, but success had only reinforced his deepest conviction: wealth demanded constant vigilance. Trust was a luxury he could not afford. A man shows his true character when he thinks no one is watching. His father had told him before consumption took him. That lesson had served Andrew well in business. He assessed every potential partner, every ranch hand, every business associate through careful observation when they thought themselves unwatched. He ran a hand through his thick brown hair, his reflection in the glass revealing a handsome face that belied his suspicion. High cheekbones, a strong jaw, and intelligent green eyes that rarely missed a detail. Women in Helena had made their interest known, but Andrew kept his distance. Romance was a distraction from building his empire, and besides, women were drawn to his fortune, not the man himself. Mr. Nash, his foreman, Lyle, appeared at the door. "That widow woman's here to see you. The one from the Peterson place." Andrew's jaw tightened. The Peterson homestead bordered the northern edge of his property, 100 acres of mostly worthless scrubland with a small cabin and barn. Old man Peterson had died 3 months ago, leaving behind his 21-year-old wife to manage alone. Andrew had made a fair offer for the land twice, and twice she had refused. "Show her in," Andrew said, moving to his desk. "And bring coffee." Moments later, she entered his study. Tessa Peterson stood just inside the doorway, her slender frame draped in a patched blue dress that had seen better days. Despite her circumstances, she carried herself with quiet dignity. Her honey-blonde hair was swept into a simple bun, wisps framing a face of delicate beauty, high cheekbones, full lips, and large hazel eyes that regarded him with a mixture of apprehension and determination. "Mrs. Peterson," Andrew said, not rising from his chair, "what brings you to the Rocking Inn in such weather?" "Mr. Nash." Her voice was surprisingly melodious. "I came to ask if you might have work. My late husband's crops failed before he passed, and winter is upon us." She twisted her hands together, a flash of gold from her wedding band catching the light. "I can cook, clean, mend, anything you might need." Andrew studied her carefully. "Your land would fetch a fair price. Enough to return east to your family, I imagine. That land is all I have left of James. It is my home now." She lifted her chin slightly. "I would rather work my fingers to the bone than surrender it." Something in her unwavering gaze unsettled him. Most people avoided his eyes when asking for favors. She did not. "I have no need for household help," he said. "My ranch hands take meals in the bunkhouse, and I manage well enough alone." "Please." The word seemed painful for her to utter. "I will work harder than any man. I just need to earn enough to see me through until spring." The desperation beneath her pride stirred something uncomfortable in Andrew. He prided himself on being fair in business, but never soft. Yet the thought of this young woman alone, starving through a Montana winter, troubled him more than it should. "I am riding north tomorrow to check fence lines near your property," he found himself saying. "I will see then if there is suitable work." Relief flooded her features, transforming them. "Thank you, Mr. Nash." Andrew inclined his head. "Until tomorrow, Mrs. Peterson." After she left, Andrew poured himself a whiskey. He was merely being practical, he told himself. If she died of starvation, that land would be tied up in territorial court for months before he could purchase it. This was business, nothing more. Yet her eyes, honest and direct, haunted him into the night. Dawn broke with blinding whiteness as fresh snow covered the land. Andrew rode north with provisions, and 2 blankets rolled behind his saddle. The temperature had dropped overnight, and his breath formed clouds before his face. The Peterson homestead appeared on the horizon, a small cabin with a thin trail of smoke rising from the chimney. As he approached, Andrew noticed the poor condition of the place. The roof needed repair, the corral fence was broken in places, and only a single scrawny milk cow occupied the barn. How did she expect to survive here alone? He found Tessa in the yard, struggling to split firewood. Her cheeks were flushed from exertion, strands of blonde hair escaping her bonnet. She wore a man's coat that swallowed her slender form. "Mrs. Peterson," he called, dismounting. She startled, then straightened, pushing hair from her face with a gloved hand. "Mr. Nash, you came. I said I would." He glanced at the poorly stacked wood. "You are going about that all wrong." "I know." Her admission came without defensiveness. "James always handled this. I am learning as best I can." Andrew sighed, removing his gloves. "Allow me to demonstrate." For the next hour, he split enough wood to last her a week, explaining proper technique. She watched attentively, trying several times herself with improving results. "You learn quickly," he observed, surprising himself with the compliment. "I have to." She smiled faintly. "Would you come inside for coffee? It is the least I can offer for your help." The cabin interior was spotless but sparsely furnished. A small table with 2 chairs occupied one corner, a narrow bed the other. The pantry door stood open, revealing nearly empty shelves. How long before she starved? As they drank coffee, Andrew noticed her hands, small but calloused, the nails clean but worn. Not the hands of someone afraid of work. "I might have a position," he said finally. "My cattle need checking daily during calving season. This northern pasture is far from the main house. If you could ride out each morning to count the herd and report any difficulties, it would save my men considerable time." Hope brightened her features. "I can ride, and I know cattle. My father raised them in Nebraska before." "Before what?" Andrew asked when she trailed off. Tessa looked away. "Before he lost everything in the panic of '73. We came west afterward, and I met James." She hesitated. "What would you pay for such work?" They negotiated terms, and Andrew left satisfied with their arrangement. He told himself it was merely convenient to have someone nearby watching his valuable stock. Nothing more. 2 weeks later, a blizzard howled across the territory. Andrew worried about his cattle, and, despite his efforts not to, about Tessa. When the storm broke 3 days later, he rode north immediately. The sight that greeted him stopped his breath. Tessa stood in knee-deep snow, leading a newborn calf toward shelter while its mother followed. She had fashioned a makeshift sled from barrel staves and was pulling the struggling animal to safety. The mother was having trouble, she called when she spotted him. "I found her this morning." The calf was half frozen. Together, they moved both animals into her barn. Inside, Andrew discovered 3 other cows with calves sheltering there. "You brought all these animals in by yourself?" he asked, incredulous. She nodded, exhausted but proud. "I could not let them die. I remembered what you said about their value." Andrew stared at her, something shifting inside him. His ranch hands would have struggled to save these cattle alone. This woman, half their size, had managed it without assistance. "You saved me considerable loss, Mrs. Peterson." "Tessa," she corrected softly. "Please. Mrs. Peterson reminds me too much of what I have lost." "Tessa," he echoed, the name feeling strange on his lips. "What you did was remarkable." Her answering smile reached her eyes, creating a warmth in Andrew's chest he could not explain. Over the following weeks, their professional relationship developed a routine. Andrew found reasons to check the northern pasture personally, bringing supplies and staying to help with repairs around her homestead. She was unfailingly grateful but never obsequious, maintaining dignity despite her circumstances. One evening, as February's bitter winds howled outside, Andrew stayed late repairing her leaking roof. Darkness fell before he finished, making the journey home dangerous. "You should stay," Tessa said practically. "There is soup, and you can take the bed. I will make a pallet by the fire." Andrew refused the bed but accepted dinner. As they ate, she spoke of her childhood in Nebraska, her brief marriage to James, and her determination to make this homestead succeed. "Why do you stay?" he asked finally. "This life is too harsh for a woman alone." Something flashed in her eyes, not anger, but resolve. "Because this land is mine. Because everyone told me I could not survive here without a husband. Because returning to my brother's home as a penniless widow would mean living on charity, being grateful for scraps." She set down her spoon. "I would rather face every hardship this territory can deliver than surrender my independence." Her words struck Andrew deeply. Was this not why he had built his own empire? To never depend on anyone else? To prove himself? I understand, he said quietly. Her eyes widened slightly, as though surprised by his empathy. In the firelight, her face appeared younger, more vulnerable. For the first time, Andrew wondered what it might be like to kiss her. The thought alarmed him enough that he stood abruptly. I should go? The moon is bright enough for travel. Disappointment flickered across her face, but was quickly masked. Of course. Thank you for the repairs. Riding home through the moonlit snow, Andrew could not shake thoughts of Tessa from his mind. Her determination, her quiet strength, the way she looked at him without calculation or artifice. It was dangerous territory. March arrived with warmer winds and the promise of spring. Andrew found himself at Tessa's cabin more frequently, bringing seeds for her garden and helping prepare fields for planting. Their conversations flowed more easily now, punctuated by occasional laughter. One afternoon, Andrew arrived to find Tessa confronting 3 men near her corral. Even from a distance, he recognized them as troublemakers from town, drifters who picked up odd jobs between drinking binges. The answer is still no, Tessa was saying as Andrew approached. This land is not for sale at any price. The largest man stepped closer. A woman's got no business farming alone. We're offering fair money for worthless dirt. Then you would not want it either, Tessa replied evenly. Maybe we'll just take it, another man suggested, his hand moving toward his pistol. Andrew drew his own weapon as he dismounted. I believe the lady declined your offer. The men turned, recognizing him immediately. His reputation as a fair but ruthless businessman was well established in the territory. Nash, the leader acknowledged. Didn't know you had interests here. Mrs. Peterson works for me, Andrew stated coldly. Any problems with her become problems with me. Understood. The men retreated quickly, mounting their horses and disappearing down the trail. Only when they were gone did Andrew holster his weapon. Tessa turned to him, her face pale but composed. Thank you, though I could have handled them. Of course you could have, he said, surprising himself with the sincerity in his voice. But even the strongest person occasionally needs allies. She studied him for a long moment. Are you my ally, Andrew Nash? The question carried weight beyond its simple words. For weeks, they had circled each other, their connection deepening without acknowledgement. Now, standing in her yard with spring sunshine warming the air, Andrew faced a crossroads. I would like to be, he said finally. That evening, they sat on her porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson. For the first time, Andrew spoke of his own past, his father's death, his determination to build something lasting, his mistrust of those who might want him only for his wealth. Is that why you have no wife? Tessa asked directly. Fear that she would love your money rather than you? Andrew stared at the darkening horizon. Perhaps, though I tell myself it is simply that I have not found a woman who understands the demands of ranching life. And if you did? Her voice was soft, almost carried away by the evening breeze. Andrew turned to look at her then, truly look at her. The last light caught in her honey-blonde hair, creating a halo effect around her delicate features. But it was her eyes that held him, direct, intelligent, unafraid. Then I would be a fool not to recognize my good fortune, he answered. Something passed between them in that moment, an understanding, a possibility. Then Tessa looked away, breaking the spell. It grows late, she said, rising. Thank you for your help today. Andrew rode home beneath a canopy of stars, his mind and heart in turmoil. For years, he had viewed emotional attachment as weakness, trusting only in what he could build with his own hands. Now, a widow with nothing but determination was challenging everything he believed. April brought heavy rains that swelled creeks beyond their banks. Andrew was inspecting a washed-out bridge when a ranch hand galloped up with urgent news. The North Creek's flooding, boss. Peterson Place is likely underwater by now. Andrew spurred his horse immediately, racing north with fear gripping his chest. The closer he got to Tessa's homestead, the worse the flooding appeared. By the time her cabin came into view, water surrounded it on 3 sides, rising rapidly. He found her on the roof of her barn, having moved her cow and chickens to the loft. Water swirled 4 feet deep around the structure, threatening to undermine its foundation. Tessa, he shouted, guiding his horse through the shallower water. Relief washed over her face. Andrew. The creek rose so quickly. I could not reach the cabin for supplies. Can you swim? He called. She nodded. Then jump. I will catch you. Without hesitation, she leapt from the roof. Andrew caught her around the waist, pulling her onto his horse. Her clothes were soaked, her body trembling against his as he guided them to higher ground. At the rocking inn, he installed her in his guest room despite the housekeeper's raised eyebrows. That evening, wearing a borrowed nightgown and robe, she joined him in his study, her hair loose around her shoulders. The flooding will recede, he assured her. We will rebuild whatever is damaged. We? She questioned softly. Andrew set down his whiskey glass. Yes, we. I cannot imagine this valley without you in it, Tessa. She moved to the window, staring out at the rain-lashed darkness. Why do you help me, Andrew? Is it truly just because I work for you? He crossed to stand behind her, close enough to smell the lavender soap she had bathed with. You know it is not. When she turned, her face was inches from his. Then why? Because you have shown me something I thought impossible, he admitted. That strength and vulnerability can exist together. That independence does not mean isolation. Her eyes searched his. And what will you do with this discovery? Instead of answering with words, Andrew lowered his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened as she responded, her hands coming up to rest against his chest. When they finally parted, her cheeks were flushed, her eyes bright. I have nothing to offer you, she whispered. No dowry, no connections. Just a flooded homestead and my own 2 hands. You offer the one thing I have never had, Andrew said. Someone who sees me, not my fortune. Someone who stands on her own feet, yet is not afraid to accept help when needed. She smiled then, radiant with hope. That goes both ways, Andrew Nash. The waters receded after 3 days, revealing considerable damage to Tessa's cabin and fields. Together, they assessed what could be salvaged. Standing amid the mud and debris, Andrew made his decision. Marry me, he said without preamble. Not because you need saving, but because together we would build something stronger than either of us could alone. Tessa looked stunned. You cannot mean that. We barely know each other. I know enough, Andrew insisted. I know you face hardship without flinching. I know you work from dawn until dusk without complaint. I know your word, once given, is unbreakable. He took her hands in his. And I know that when I am with you, I am more myself than I have ever been. She pulled her hands away. I need time to think. This is too sudden. Andrew nodded, respecting her caution even as disappointment coursed through him. Take all the time you need. My offer stands. 2 weeks passed with no answer from Tessa. Andrew threw himself into ranch work, expanding his operations and planning improvements. If she refused him, at least he would have his empire. The thought brought little comfort. On a warm May evening, Andrew returned exhausted from a cattle drive to find a light burning in his study. Inside, he discovered Tessa waiting, dressed in a simple blue dress, her hair neatly arranged. You should be resting, she said, rising from her chair. I heard about the difficult drive. How did you get here? He asked, too surprised for pleasantries. I rode. Your housekeeper let me in. She approached him slowly. I have been thinking about your proposal. Andrew held his breath. Before I give my answer, there is something I must know. She stood before him now, close enough to touch. Would you still want me if I had nothing? If all your wealth disappeared tomorrow? Yes, he answered without hesitation. But I would work twice as hard to give you the comfort you deserve. She smiled then, tears gathering in her eyes. That is the right answer. And my answer to you is yes, Andrew. I will marry you. Joy surged through him as he pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the emotion he had kept carefully controlled for months. When they separated, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to hers. I love you, he said, the words feeling both foreign and exactly right. I did not expect to, did not want to, but I do. And I love you, she replied. Not your ranch or your wealth, but the man who splits firewood in the snow and races through floods without hesitation. They were married in June beneath the cottonwood trees on the bank of the creek that had once threatened to destroy Tessa's home. The whole county attended, curious to see the confirmed bachelor and the determined widow united at last. As summer bloomed across the valley, they combined their lands, incorporating Tessa's homestead into the expanded rocking inn. She insisted on keeping the original cabin, renovated now, as a reminder of where they had begun. Their union brought out the best in both. Andrew's shrewdness in business was tempered by Tessa's compassion. Her independence flourished with the security to take risks. Together, they built not just a cattle empire, but a home filled with warmth that had been missing from both their lives. One night in late August, as they lay in bed with moonlight spilling through the window, Andrew confessed his oldest habit. "When I first met you," he admitted, "I tested you." Tessa propped herself up on one elbow. "Tested me how?" "I pretended to sleep one afternoon while helping repair your barn. I wanted to see what you would do when you thought no one was watching." She laughed softly. "And what did I do that was so revealing?" "You covered me with your only good blanket," he said, remembering how he had frozen in surprise at the tender gesture. "Then you whispered, 'Thank you,' and returned to work. No one had shown me such simple kindness in years." Tessa touched his face gently. "That was the moment, wasn't it? When you began to see me as more than a business arrangement? It was the moment I realized my heart was not as impenetrable as I believed," Andrew confessed. "You slipped past my defenses with a single act of generosity." She kissed him softly. "I am glad you were not truly asleep. It would have been a shame to waste such a pivotal moment." As autumn painted the Montana hills gold and crimson, Tessa shared news that completed their happiness. A child would join them by spring. Andrew, who had once believed wealth was the only reliable companion in the harsh territory, found himself surrounded by the true riches of family and love. The Rocking Inn flourished under their joint stewardship, becoming not just the largest ranch in the county, but the most welcoming. Where Andrew had once seen only land to conquer, he now saw a legacy of compassion and strength to pass to future generations. And it had all begun with a widow who refused to surrender her independence and a rancher who discovered that the greatest test of character was opening one's heart to love.